The new spending law changes how Americans pay for education at every level. One provision affects school vouchers with a possible ripple effect on public school funding. Another targets large university endowments, bringing a new tax reality to higher education.
You might get a few $100s back for giving to charity, but you could also lose thousands if your child is aiming for a top university. Trump's new tax law is changing how we fund both education and our communities. The real question is, who stands to benefit and who could be left behind? Starting in 2027, the One Big Beautiful Bill introduces a dollar-for-dollar tax credit up to $1,700 a year for donations to K-12 private school scholarship programs. This replaces the old system of regular deductions. With no federal cap on the total credits available, some experts estimate the government could end up covering as much as $100 billion annually. For families with no children in private school, this means public school funding may take a hit, especially in programs supporting students with disabilities. For example, if a student needs an aide at $20 per hour, budget cuts might reduce that support, directly affecting the classroom learning experience. Also in 2020, universities with large endowments will face higher taxes under the new law. Schools holding more than $750,000 per student in endowment funds will pay a 4% tax. Those with over $2 million per student will pay 8%, a sharp increase from the current 1.4%. However, colleges with fewer than 3,000 tuition-paying students, like Amherst or Wellesley, are exempt no matter how large their endowment. For top universities like Harvard, with an endowment over $50 billion, the new law could cost $200 to $280 million a year, enough to fund hundreds of scholarships or entire research programs. Even schools like Rice University expect to pay more than $10 million annually, roughly the value of 100 full scholarships. To adapt, many universities have started freezing hiring, delaying raises, and slowing student enrollment growth. Families sending students to top-tier schools may notice tighter financial aid, fewer scholarships, and less generous tuition offsets. If you're planning for an Ivy League education, you might need to budget several $1,000s more per year than previous classes did. Beginning in 2026, the law also introduces a charitable deduction for non-itemizers up to $1,000 for individuals and $2,000 for couples. For the first time, over 90% of Americans who use the standard tax form will be eligible for this kind of deduction. That means if you normally give $500 to charity but don't itemize your taxes, you can still reduce your taxable income by $500 and possibly get $50 to $100 back at tax time. It's a practical way to reward everyday generosity. But wealthier donors and businesses face tighter limits. High-income individuals can only deduct up to 35% of their adjusted gross income AGI and must subtract 0.5% AGI from their donation total. For businesses, the reduction is 1% of AGI. Experts estimate this could reduce large-scale charitable giving by about $81 billion over the next decade. If you've noticed major donations from big companies or wealthy individuals to museums, arts programs, or research institutions, those contributions may become less frequent. This could leave some of those organizations needing to pause or revise plans if they cannot find replacement funding.
And this is very modest. And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs.
Imagine walking into a car dealership with $40,000 in your pocket, all set on driving home in a pickup truck. But then the salesperson says, "Sorry, it's $49,000 now. New tax." You sigh, then glance at a shiny Chinese SUV glistening under the sun. Sounds like something out of a movie. It's actually what's happening in the US right now, where a new tariff policy has sent car prices soaring, pushed businesses into billions in losses, and forced regular folks to either buy fast or look elsewhere. Some automakers are bracing to shut down plants. Others are seeing customers rush in like cars are about to disappear. Starting in April 2025, the US has been imposing a 25% tariff on imported cars and parts under Section 232. That includes sedans, SUV, minivans, light trucks, and even essential components like engines, transmissions, and electric systems. However, vehicles that qualify under the USMCA deal, meaning they're built with enough parts sourced from the US. Mexico or Canada will only see the foreign-sourced components taxed. Experts from US News say the tariff could raise car prices by $2,300, around 5% to $4,700, depending on how much of the car is made locally. Kelley Blue Book warns the minimum hike will likely be $3,000. And certain pickup models could go up by as much as $10,000. Even if you were looking at something fairly basic, this tax could push the average price from $48,600 already high to over $50,000 for the first time ever. To put it simply, if you had your eye on a $30,000 car, you may now be looking at $33,000. And that might be enough for some folks to hit pause and rethink their buying plans. This 25% tariff is hitting big automakers hard. Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep, Ram, and Fiat expects to lose $1.7 billion in 2025 alone, with $327 million already lost in the first half of the year. General Motors GM took a $1.1 billion hit just in the second quarter, dropping profits by 32% to around $3 billion. GM expects the full-year cost of tariffs to land somewhere between $4 to $5 billion. Volkswagen also reported a $1.5 billion loss for the first half of 2025, with North American sales down 16%. That's a direct result of rising prices on imported cars and parts since the tariff kicked in. This means car prices are up anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000. Depending on the model, a mid-range pickup that used to cost $40,000 might now run between $44,000 and $49,000, making it harder for many people to afford the vehicle they had in mind. To fight back, General Motors is investing another $4 billion into domestic factories, aiming to boost production by 300,000 vehicles per year by the year 2027. The goal: cut back on imports, dodge the tariffs, and keep prices more manageable for American buyers. A survey by Dave Canton Group and Kaiser Associates found that 40% of Americans are now open to buying cars made in China. That's a big shift driven mainly by financial pressure. In July 2025 alone, U.S. car sales jumped 1.6%, well above the 0.5% increase in overall retail sales. That tells us many buyers are rushing to buy cars now before prices go up even more because of the tariff.
We're going to bring it from 25% to 50%, the tariffs on steel into the United States of America.
He still has. So slapping tariffs like steel is still one tool in his toolbox that he's now bringing out and using it to relitigate this trade war.
"50%, a number that may sound technical, but it has sent shockwaves across the market. Overnight, aluminum prices soared, dragging along the risk that everyday products around us could suddenly become more expensive. That car you were planning to buy might now cost an extra $1,000. The soda can in your fridge, will it still be just spare change? And further down the line, what will happen to thousands of workers in both the US and Canada when production lines are thrown into turmoil?" On June 4th, President Donald Trump signed an executive order to raise import tariffs on aluminum and steel to 50%. Since Canada accounts for about 60% of total U.S. aluminum imports, the shock instantly rattled the market. In Chicago, the premium on spot aluminum surged past 70 cents per pound, equivalent to $1,543 per ton, nearly doubling in less than 2 weeks. For automakers and food packaging plants, that means millions of dollars in added costs. And sooner or later, that burden lands squarely on consumers. A US-made car could rise in price by $500 to $1,000 simply because aluminum costs more. Even everyday items, soda cans, beer cans are expected to go up by a few cents each. Across the border, Canada isn't standing still. The Aluminary Alouette smelter in Quebec announced a $1.5 billion Canadian dollars investment over 20 years, alongside a long-term clean energy supply deal with Hydro-Quebec. This move not only helps reduce emissions but also secures thousands of local jobs. Yet if the 50% tariff lingers, many smaller producers face the risk of heavy losses. The Canadian government has already floated financial support packages to protect the industry, but that could mean added strain on the national budget. And when the budget tightens, funding for healthcare, education, or social welfare services people rely on every day could be squeezed. In other words, U.S. tariff policy doesn't just reshape the aluminum market, it spills directly into the daily lives of Canadian working families, from paychecks to social safety nets. Shut out of the U.S. market, Canadian aluminum is being redirected toward Europe and Asia. It may sound far away, but in truth, the effects are already close to home. With U.S. supply tightening, analysts project the Midwest premium could climb to 78 cents per pound by the end of this year and nearly 87 cents by 2026. That translates into higher prices for cars, home appliances, and even aluminum window frames in new houses. For ordinary families, these are costs you'll feel in your hands at the supermarket checkout or when signing a home renovation contract. Meanwhile, in Canada, shifting trade flows may leave smelter workers facing unstable production schedules with periods of surplus followed by shortages of orders. Jobs could become more precarious, especially in smaller communities that depend heavily on one or two large plants.
With the looming threat of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs, a Buy Canadian movement has picked up across the country. You may have noticed it when you go into grocery stores or supply shops, a tag that tells you if the product you're about to pick up is made in Canada.
What if a simple change in consumer habits led to billions of dollars shifting hands between two close neighbors? If Canadian families suddenly stopped buying 6 everyday American products, would American companies even notice at first? Or would the real shock come months later as lost sales ripple through factories, small towns, and even online platforms? Imagine how daily routines in both countries might quietly transform if trusted brands slowly vanished from shopping carts. For many years, Americans saw Canada as a reliable partner in trade and daily life. But recently, as U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, energy, and autos reached new highs, Canadians have responded in a quietly powerful way. Not with protests, but by simply turning away from certain U.S. products. 6 brands stand out: peanut butter, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, Amazon, Netflix, Walmart house brands, and cars from Ford and GM. This is no longer just an economic move. It has become a cultural statement. We don't support a nation that punishes us. This shift began in the spring of 2025, and by summer, the effect was visible in store aisles across Ontario and British Columbia. For American workers, especially those in manufacturing and retail, each unsold jar or canceled order represents a lost hour of work. If the boycott continues, annual losses for you side. Companies could exceed $2 billion USD, putting pressure on jobs from the factory floor to logistics and marketing teams. Peanut butter, once a pantry staple, tells a striking story. Sales of Jif and Skippy, 2 iconic American brands, dropped 34% in just 1 quarter across Canada. Supermarkets have quickly replaced them with local alternatives like Kraft Canada and Nuts to You. Even Walmart, the retail giant, has found its U.S. made goods left untouched. As Canadian shoppers favor local products or brands from other countries, the message is clear for American producers and investors. Brand loyalty can vanish quickly when national pride is at stake. The ripple effect extends to farmers supplying peanuts, workers in packaging plants, and truck drivers moving goods north. If this trend continues, the U.S. peanut industry alone could see export revenues shrink by up to $150 million USD per year. Amazon's Canadian operation took a direct hit. In early July 2025, Amazon suspended services in Quebec, leading to around 700 job losses. While some customers shifted to Canadian platforms or European tech providers, the trust gap grew. Netflix, another household name, also saw subscription numbers fall as families questioned supporting a U.S. brand in times of economic tension. The tech sector, often seen as immune to politics, is now facing unexpected headwinds. Investors and workers from software developers to warehouse staff could see income growth stall. Projections suggest U.S. e-commerce and streaming exports to Canada may drop by up to 500 million USD this year if consumer confidence does not rebound. perhaps the most visible shift is in the auto market. After Canada imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. made cars in response to the Trump administration's moves. Showroom traffic for Ford and GM sharply declined. Online searches for these brands in Canada plummeted, while orders were canceled and lots stood empty. Canadian drivers quickly switched to Korean and Japanese models like Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda. For small-town dealerships in Michigan and Ohio, every unsold car means tighter budgets and fewer jobs. Industry forecasts indicate U.S. auto exports to Canada could fall by over $2 billion USD in 2025, a sobering figure for anyone whose paycheck depends on cross-border sales.
For decades, coffee imports entered the United States largely duty-free, but now some of America's top trading partners are facing double-digit tariffs on their imports, including coffee. It's straining an industry that provides more than 1 million jobs in the US, and it's poised to strain prices too.
Something big just happened, and you'll probably feel it most clearly each morning. Right there in your hand, your usual cup of coffee. A new tariff from the White House, a strong reaction from Brazil, and a global coffee market thrown into turmoil. The result? Prices are jumping, supermarkets are scrambling, cafes are raising their eyebrows, and the everyday consumers, are left holding the bill. But this is not just about pricier coffee. It's a clear sign that pressure on prices, supply chains, and daily spending is spreading fast from offices in Washington to store shelves across the country. Still think your morning coffee is just a habit. It is not that simple anymore. The Trump administration has just slapped a 50% tariff on coffee imports from Brazil, a country that supplies about 35 to 40% of the coffee Americans drink. And right after the news broke, global Arabica coffee prices shot up, hitting $4.30 per pound in early 2025, twice as high as the same time last year. In the US, the price of roasted coffee exports has already jumped 11.8%, and instant coffee has gone up 12.4%. From May 2024 to May 2025, according to forecasts from the Wall Street Journal, this new tariff could push retail coffee prices up by 15 to 20% in the near future. What does that mean for your wallet? A bag of coffee that used to cost $12 might soon cost $13.20 to $14.40 in just a few weeks. Small cafes are also feeling the pressure and may need to raise their prices or cut back on discounts. That familiar cup of morning coffee, it might just start making your wallet feel a little lighter. The International Coffee Organization, ICO, reports that global coffee prices actually dropped 11.8% in July 2025, down to 259.31 US cents per pound. That's lower than the month before, but still higher than July 2024. Yet, coffee prices in the US are still climbing. The June 2025 CPI shows that coffee prices in supermarkets rose 2.2%, helping push overall food prices up by 0.3%. Even though input costs are dropping, taxes, shipping, and high interest rates keep final prices high. For everyday shoppers, the difference is showing up in receipts. That same $12 bag of coffee might now ring up at $12.25 or $12.30. It may not sound like much, but if you drink coffee daily, those extra cents add up quickly. The US retail scene is feeling the heat from all sides. Tariffs, rising goods costs, expensive logistics, and high interest rates. Chains like Food Line and Stop & Shop, part of Ahold Delhaize, are pushing back against price hikes from big-name brands like Nivea and Heineken, trying to shield shoppers from sticker shock. In the middle of all this, the new US tariffs are expected to keep pushing coffee prices even higher, adding more weight to Americans already juggling rising living costs. Next time you go to the store, look closely. You might notice more store-brand items taking up space, while some well-known brands quietly disappear. A bag of laundry detergent might still be priced reasonably thanks to retailer strategies. But that cup of morning coffee, it could cost you an extra 50 cents to $1, a small increase. Yes, but enough to make some people rethink their daily habits.
Dollar General is recalling 3 lots of its 8-ounce Clover Valley instant coffee. The Food and Drug Administration says the product potentially contains fragments of glass.
Picture this. You wake up early, still half asleep. Reach for your usual coffee maker and pour yourself a steaming cup. Just like any other morning until you find out that very product was just recalled for possibly containing shards of glass. Or worse, that can have cold brew in your fridge might be on a watch list for potential botulism contamination. And you had no idea. Sounds like something out of a Black Mirror episode. Maybe, but this is the reality of America in August 2025. A place where something as simple as choosing your morning coffee quietly taps into much bigger conversations about how products are made, about food safety standards, about how much we trust the brands we bring home, and about the silent shifts happening in our supply chains that most of us rarely notice. On August 11th and 12th, 2025, Dollar General issued a nationwide recall of Clover Valley Instant Coffee 8-ounce jar due to concerns it might contain fragments of glass. The recall applies across 48 states, excluding Alaska and Hawaii. 3 lots are affected: L5163 and L5164, best by December 13th, 2026, and L5165 best by December 14th, 2026. With UPC code 8769410040069. These were sold between July 9th and July 21st, 2025. No injuries have been reported so far, but the FDA warns that glass shards could cause mouth injuries, broken teeth, or if swallowed, even internal damage. Dollar General is asking customers to discard the product and contact them for a refund. This situation has nudged people to be a little more cautious, especially when it comes to budget-friendly coffee. If you bought a jar for around $4, now you're tossing it, chasing a refund, and maybe even second-guessing your next grocery run. On June 17, 2024, Snapchill LLC, based in Wisconsin, voluntarily recalled its entire line of canned coffees with valid shelf life after the FDA discovered the manufacturing process hadn't been registered under regulations for low-acid canned foods. That opens the door for a bacteria called Clostridium botulinum, which can produce a toxin that causes serious botulism poisoning. Roughly 250 to 300 canned coffee products sold nationwide under various partner brands like Intelligentsia, Bolt, Cape Cod Coffee, and others are included in the recall. As of now, no illnesses have been reported. And Snapchill says there's no evidence that any cans actually contain toxins. Still, the FDA recommends consumers either discard the products or contact Snapchill for a refund, even if all you have is a photo of the can as proof of purchase. This news has made folks more cautious about canned coffee that quick. Grab and go drink many of us have gotten used to. If you bought one for $3 to $4, it might now be heading to the trash, or you're going through the hassle of filing a refund request. Just because it's called decaf doesn't mean it's caffeine-free. A 16-ounce cup of decaf can still have anywhere from between 8.6 and 13.9 milligrams of caffeine. That may not sound like much, but if you drink 3 cups a day, that's nearly 28 milligrams, enough to affect people who are sensitive to caffeine. By FDA standards, decaf coffee must have at least 97% of its caffeine removed. But here's something not everyone knows. One method still used, called the European method, involves a chemical called methylene chloride. While the FDA allows trace amounts up to 10 parts per million, some people are uneasy about the long-term health effects. If you only have 1 or 2 cups a day, you probably have nothing to worry about. But if you're concerned about chemical exposure or drink decaf regularly, it might be worth switching to something called Swiss water, a chemical-free, natural decaffeination process. Yes, it may cost a few dollars more, but for many, the peace of mind is worth it.
So we have a winner for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. The member associations of Canada, Mexico and USA have been selected by the FIFA Congress to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Imagine you're throwing a birthday party. It's your house, your cake, your guest list. Everything's ready. But then, at the last minute, your next-door neighbor blasts louder music, sets up a flashier spread, and suddenly, everyone drifts over there. No one's saying your party's bad, it's just the other one feels more exciting. That's pretty much how the US is feeling right now about the 2026 World Cup. They haven't lost their host status, but Canada just snagged a brighter stage. Meanwhile, major contracts are slipping away. Visa processing is stalling. Thousands of workers are still waiting. And people are starting to ask, are we still in the driver's seat for the event we invited the whole world to? FIFA expects the global revenue for the 2026 World Cup cycle to hit around $11 billion, mainly from broadcast rights, sponsorships, ticket sales, and hospitality. Some reports suggest the number could even exceed $10 billion just from the final tournament alone. That kind of money was supposed to be a major economic boost. But when Canada stepped up and secured more matches, suddenly, the financial winds started to shift. As soon as Canada officially got the green light to host additional games, public chatter picked up. Will that $11 billion still hold firm? Or is it now swaying by the day due to a neighbor's decision? For folks attending in person, this is more than just a number. It could hit your wallet through flight prices, hotel stays, or travel packages, because when a single location changes on the tournament map, it could mean shelling out an extra $50 to $100 for your next big adventure. In Boston, Gillette Stadium has been tapped to host 7 matches, including a quarterfinal on July 9, 2026, more than initially expected. The city is planning for around 450,000 visitors, which could bring in an estimated $500 million in economic impact. That means real business for hotels, local services, and the tourism industry. But residents should also prepare for price changes. A hotel night that normally costs $150 might shoot up to $180 to $200, simply because demand will be sky high during the event. Down in Miami and South Florida, the government has approved a support package worth $46 million to $21 million in cash, and $25 million in services like security, healthcare, and sanitation. The goal is to fuel economic growth, which is projected to reach $920 million, thanks to boosts in tourism, infrastructure, and jobs. Still, not everyone's sold. Some locals wonder if that Big A budget should have gone to community programs instead, like free school lunches or public clinics. The challenge is clear: make the economy thrive without losing sight of what everyday folks really need. Many experts are voicing concern that strict immigration policies and long visa wait times, some stretching over a year, could hurt the U.S.'s ability to host a smooth World Cup. It's not just tourists affected, but also players, reporters, and the behind-the-scenes crews who help the event run. The Trump administration has pushed back against these worries. The vice president assured the public that the U.S. wants visitors to come and celebrate. And Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem said they'll be working closely with federal agencies to speed up visa processing and keep the event secure and efficient. FIFA President Gianni Infantino still believes the World Cup could bring $50 billion in overall economic value and create nearly 300,000 jobs in the U.S. Even so, the new visa policies come with a catch: a $250 visa integrity fee for most short-term tourist visas. Many travel agencies are already warning that higher costs and more red tape could discourage international fans. In Houston, one of the host cities, homestay owners and event services are beginning to worry too. If visa issues continue to pile up, no one really knows how many guests will actually make it.